There is a silent war happening inside your mind. You sit down to study, to work, to create, to build your future, but something invisible keeps pulling you away. One notification, one thought, one tiny distraction, and suddenly 30 minutes disappear. Then an hour, then a day, and deep inside, you know you are capable of more, much more, if only you could hold your attention long enough to unlock your potential. Today's story is about Ethan Mori, a boy who felt trapped inside that same war. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't unfocused by nature. He simply lived in a world designed to steal attention, the same world you and I live in. But one moment, one teacher, and one ancient practice changed everything. If you want to learn the Japanese technique that transformed Ethan from a distracted dreamer into someone who could control his mind, reshape his future, and rewrite his entire life, stay with this video. This might be the turning point you've been waiting for. Before we begin, if you find value here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. It supports the work, and it helps you stay connected to content that strengthens your mind, your discipline, and your purpose. Take a breath. Settle your mind. Let's begin. Ethan Mori was 16 the first time he realized he was falling behind in life. He wasn't unintelligent. In fact, he understood science, math, and programming better than most of his classmates. But every time he sat down to work, something pulled him away. He would open a textbook and end up scrolling through Instagram. He would start a video lesson and pause halfway to check the score of a game. His mind wasn't quiet, it was a storm. And Ethan had a dream, the kind that felt impossible and thrilling at the same time. He wanted to study computer science at one of the most competitive universities in the world. But his grades were nowhere near that level. While other students received straight A's, Ethan drifted in mediocrity, a B here, a C there, enough to pass, never enough to rise. His friends joked about his ambitions. They said his dream was too big for someone who couldn't even finish homework on time. They laughed, but Ethan didn't. Every word sank in. At home, things weren't easier. His parents encouraged him, but in their support he heard disappointment. You have so much potential. If only you could focus. And he knew they were right. Ethan wasn't lazy. He wasn't incapable. He simply couldn't control his attention. Every time he tried to study, his mind drifted to fantasies, graduating at a top university, working at a dream job, proving everyone wrong. But while he imagined success, the pages in front of him stayed blank. The future felt bright in his imagination, but blurry in reality. One afternoon, after receiving another low grade on a math exam, Ethan felt something break inside him. He sat alone in the empty classroom, staring at the paper, feeling the weight of another failure. For the first time, the dream that once fueled him now felt cruel, distant, unreachable. But instead of giving up, Ethan made a decision that would change his life, a small decision. Almost invisible. He walked down the hallway to find a man who might know what to do next. That man was his math teacher. And that moment was the beginning. The hallway was quiet when Ethan reached the staff room door. His heart thudded the way it does when you're afraid of the answer you might receive. He knocked softly. Inside, Mr. Hayashi, his math teacher, looked up from a pile of papers. Calm as always, glasses resting low on his nose. He was a man in his 50s, originally from Japan, with a presence that felt grounded, steady, unshakable. Ethan hesitated at the doorway. "Do you have a moment?" Mr. Hayashi nodded and gestured toward the chair across from him. "Of course, sit." For a long second, Ethan didn't know what to say. He stared at the floor, trying to gather the words, feeling them dissolve in panic. Then finally, the truth came out. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I want to do better. I want to get good grades. I want to study computer science someday. But I can't focus. Every time I try, my brain goes somewhere else. I get distracted, I feel stuck, and I don't know how to fix it." Mr. Hayashi listened silently, not interrupting, not correcting, not rushing. When Ethan finished speaking, there was no judgment in his eyes, only recognition, as if he had heard these words before. "Ethan," he asked gently, "when you study, how many browser tabs do you leave open?" Ethan blinked. 8, maybe 10. "And your phone?" "Next to me, notifications on." "And your thoughts? Are they calm?" Ethan shook his head. "Never." Mr. Hayashi leaned back, folding his hands together. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said. "My mind was restless too, until someone taught me something that changed everything." He reached for a scrap of paper. wrote 2 words in neat handwriting, and passed it across the desk. Ichigyo-Zammai. Ethan read it aloud, uncertain. What does it mean? It is a Zen concept. The teacher said, to do one thing with total attention. Not multitasking, not half focus, not thinking of the next moment. It is the practice of becoming the action itself. Ethan frowned slightly, confused. So, just focusing? Not just focusing, Mr. Hayashi said softly. Becoming. When you study math, you are not Ethan studying math. You are mathematics unfolding. No separation between the doer and the task. The words sounded strange, almost mystical, but something inside Ethan stirred: curiosity, possibility, relief. Is there proof? He asked. Does it actually work? Mr. Hayashi smiled and opened a drawer. He pulled out printed research papers, studies on neuroscience and concentration, and placed them in Ethan's hands. Take these, read them, try what they describe, then come back and tell me what happens. Ethan stared at the pages, feeling the weight of something real, something new, something hopeful. Ethan, the teacher added quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. You do not lack intelligence. You lack attention, and when you learn to direct your attention, there will be nothing you cannot do. Ethan left the room holding the papers tighter than he realized. For the first time in a long time, the path forward didn't feel blurred. It felt illuminated. This was the moment, the door opening, the story turning. And tomorrow, the work would begin. That night, Ethan spread the papers across his desk and began reading. His room was quiet, but his mind was loud, buzzing with questions, curiosity, and a strange, cautious excitement. The articles Mr. Hayashi had given him described how the brain behaves under constant distraction. How every notification, every shift of attention forces the mind to burn energy just to refocus. The more you switch, the more you train your brain to expect switching. Distraction wasn't a personal failure, it was a habit, and habits could be changed. Ethan read about combining Ichigyo-Zammai with time blocking, short periods of total focus followed by deliberate rest. He learned about modifying the environment, removing the phone from the room, turning off notifications, keeping only one browser tab open, simplifying the space until there was nowhere for the mind to escape. The instructions were clear, almost too simple, yet something in them felt powerful. That Monday afternoon, Ethan came home from school and did something he had never done before. He created a ritual. He placed his phone in a drawer on the other side of the house. He shut off every notification on his laptop. He closed every tab except one, the math assignment that needed attention. Then he set a timer for 25 minutes and took 3 deep breaths. The first 5 minutes were chaos. His mind screamed for stimulation. Check your phone. See who texted. Open YouTube. Go anywhere except here. But Ethan remembered the line he had read the night before. When distraction arises, don't fight it, notice it, then return to the task. So he did, 10 times, then 20, again and again, gently guiding his attention back to the page. When the timer rang, he looked up, surprised. He didn't stop. He reset the timer for another 25 minutes. And another. Somewhere in that third session, something shifted. The noise faded. The resistance eased, and the work began to flow. 75 minutes passed, and he had completed more math problems in that brief window than he typically did in an entire week. When he finally leaned back in his chair, he felt an energy he hadn't felt in years, not relief. Not pride, but control. For the rest of the week, Ethan repeated the ritual, same environment, same breathing, same immersion, and soon, Ichigyo-Zammai began to bleed into the rest of his life. He ate without screens, walked without headphones, spoke to people with full presence. Little by little, he woke up from autopilot. His friends noticed first. You don't hang out anymore. Everything okay? Ethan smiled. Better than okay. Inside, he felt something rising, clarity, rhythm, momentum. For the first time, he wasn't just dreaming about the future. He was building it. And the test that would measure this change was coming. The day of the math test arrived sooner than Ethan expected. He sat at his desk, pencil in hand, feeling that familiar wave of nerves, the old version of himself tugging at his sleeve, whispering that nothing had really changed. But then he closed his eyes, inhaled, and remembered the practice. One breath, one task, one moment. When he opened his eyes, the classroom noise faded, and everything else slipped away. For the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about the grade. He wasn't worried about his parents or his future or proving anything to anyone. He wasn't even thinking about himself. He simply became the work. Numbers and lines unfolded not as obstacles, but as a rhythm. Problems that once felt intimidating now felt engaging, almost alive. When the bell rang, he blinked in surprise. Time had disappeared. A week later, the tests were returned. Ethan sat with his hands pressed against his knees, trying not to expect anything, trying not to hope too loudly. Mr. Hayashi walked by, placing the paper face down on his desk. He gave a small nod, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just enough to send a pulse of energy through Ethan's chest. When Ethan flipped the paper over, he froze. An A. A clean, solid, undeniable A. It was the highest grade he had ever received in mathematics. For a moment, he just stared at the letter, trying to fit it into his sense of identity. The room seemed brighter, the air lighter, the future wider. He looked up and met Mr. Hayashi's eyes across the classroom. The teacher's smile was subtle, but filled with understanding. They both knew what this meant. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was proof. Ethan walked home that afternoon with a kind of energy that felt new, quiet, grounded, electric. And when he reached his room, he didn't celebrate. He didn't post anything online. He didn't even tell his friends. He did something far more important. He sat down. He put his phone away. He took 3 deep breaths. And he worked. Because the first result wasn't the finish line. It was the signal that the road ahead had just opened. The months that followed were nothing short of transformational. Ethan continued practicing Ichigyo-Zammai every single day, not as a motivational burst, not as a temporary fix, but as a way of living. His grades rose steadily, not just in math, but in physics, chemistry, programming. Subjects that once felt scattered and overwhelming now unfolded with clarity and direction. His parents noticed before he even said a word. "You seem different," his mother said one evening. Ethan smiled. "I just learned how to focus." But something deeper was happening beneath the surface. Ethan was discovering that success wasn't about forcing willpower or pushing harder. It was about building a system, a ritual, that made distraction impossible and progress inevitable. The phone stayed in another room. Notifications remained off. Each study session had a beginning and an end. Each breath brought him back to the present moment. What once felt like chaos now felt like control. Despite the progress, Ethan didn't forget his dream: university. Something remarkable, something greater. At the end of the school year, with trembling hands and a steady heart, he submitted his college applications, including one to the program he once believed was out of reach. His friends still laughed. "You, applying there? You've improved, sure, but that school?" He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't need to. He simply answered, "I'll do my best, that's enough." Then he returned to his practice, task by task, breath by breath, day by day. His world became quieter, richer, more focused. When he studied for entrance exams, he entered full immersion. When he wrote essays, he gave them total attention. When he worked on projects, he became the work. Months later, on an ordinary afternoon filled with nothing special, Ethan opened his inbox, and there it was. A message that would change everything. "Congratulations, you have been admitted." The world seemed to pause. His hands shook, his heart raced, his parents cried, and Ethan laughed in disbelief, not because he had finally reached his dream, but because he understood something far more powerful. He didn't get accepted by chance. He earned it by mastering the only thing most people never learn to control: attention. Ichigyo-Zammai had carried him exactly where he once thought he could never go. And this was only the beginning. Getting accepted into his dream university felt unreal, but Ethan soon discovered that arriving wasn't the finish line, it was just another starting point. The coursework was intense, the expectations were high, the competition was fierce. Many of his classmates, brilliant in high school, now struggled under the weight of distraction, burnout, and pressure. But Ethan had something different: not superior intelligence, not luck, but attention. Every morning before studying, he followed the same ritual he had built years earlier: clean desk, quiet room, phone away, 3 deep breaths, total immersion. While others rushed from task to task, Ethan focused on one thing at a time. In programming labs, he was fully present. In group work, he listened deeply. In every challenge, he entered the same state that had carried him through high school, not frantic effort, but calm concentration. Professors began to notice. Your attention to detail is exceptional, one remarked. You never seem overwhelmed, said another. But Ethan knew the truth. He wasn't stronger than anyone else, he was simply trained. As semesters passed, the pattern repeated. While many students felt scattered by endless notifications, messages, and mental noise, Ethan stayed anchored. His progress wasn't explosive, it was steady, consistent, unwavering. He didn't try to be perfect, he tried to be present. When he graduated, he did so with honors. Soon after, he began his career in software development. And just like in college, he applied Ichigyo-Zammai to everything he touched. Every line of code was written with full attention. Every meeting was attended with clarity. Every project received undivided focus. His growth was almost quiet in how natural it appeared. 2 years into his role, he became a full-stack developer. 3 years later, a senior engineer. At 28, he was leading a team, not because he was louder than others. Not because he was more charismatic, but because his ability to stay fully present made him reliable, calm, and deeply effective. His coworkers often asked, "What's your secret? How do you stay so consistent?" And Ethan always answered the same way. "I'm not smarter, I'm just here, one moment at a time." But perhaps the most remarkable change wasn't visible in his resume, it was in his life. Ichigyo-Zammai had carried him beyond achievement. It had shaped who he was, how he thought, and how he moved through the world. And he knew the journey wasn't ending. It was expanding. Years later, Ethan would look back and realize something profound. The true gift of Ichigyo-Zammai wasn't productivity. It wasn't getting better grades, or getting into university, or building a successful career. Those things were milestones, beautiful, meaningful milestones, but not the real transformation. The real change was presence. Ichigyo-Zammai taught him how to stop living inside noise, how to stop racing through moments without noticing them, how to wake up from the autopilot that steals years from people without them ever realizing it. Food tasted different now, conversations felt deeper, walks were clearer, life, once blurred by distraction, became sharp and vivid. And perhaps the most powerful part, Ethan discovered that happiness wasn't found in achieving more, it was found in being here. Fully here. Today, as a team leader, he teaches the same practice to others. People who once struggled with stress and procrastination now work with clarity and calm. People who thought they weren't capable discover that distraction isn't a personality trait, it's a habit. And habits can be rewritten. Ethan isn't extraordinary. He didn't win the lottery of talent. He simply learned to direct his attention. And if there is one truth this story leaves behind, it is this: whoever controls their attention controls their life. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. Where your energy goes, your future grows. So here is your invitation. Try it. One task. One breath. One moment at a time. Ichigyo-Zammai isn't an idea, it's a doorway. And the path beyond it is yours to walk. If this story resonated with you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, not just to support the work, but to stay connected to future content that strengthens your focus, your discipline, and your inner life. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs it. And remember, presence is power. Be here. One moment, one action, fully lived.